This is what's left of 3850 East New York Street, now just a parking lot. This house has harbored such evil that it had to be demolished and paved over. The gruesome torture of Sylvia Likens happened here, just a lowly teenager. The torture enacted by the very people who was left to take care of her was a shock to my very soul. Although this happened 59 years ago, it is still talked about today. Sylvia Likens is gone, but not forgotten. Let me tell you that story. I am L.T. Bartek. I have two stories to tell you this week as we drive around Indianapolis. If you have never been to Indianapolis and would like to see what some parts of it look like, stay tuned. Or if you want to hear a sad tale, this is where to be. I am lost for words. Telling one of these stories is going to be hard for me. Now, I have told the stories of abuse on children and adults, but this one is so terrible that I had to take breaks in researching it and putting it together. I will tell these stories in the order in which we arrive at these locations, and I apologize for starting off with the gruesome one first. We will change that tune for the next one. But do not think I view these heart-wrenching stories lightly, for I do not. Like a lot of you, CB and I are drawn to these stories, but it really hurts me to know that a child had gone through something like this, and people are capable of doing this to another human being. This first story is not for the faint of heart. I repeat, not for the faint of heart, so viewer discretion is advised. This is the long one, so let me get into it. Story is about Sylvia Likens. My name is Jenny Likens. My family consists of my dad, Lester Likens, Mama, Betty Likens, Diana and Danny, the first set of twins, Sylvia, Beanie and me, Jenny Likens, the second of the twins. Moving around is hard for me. I contracted polio at a young age and walk around with a brace on my leg. Daddy was always trying to find work to keep us fed and sheltered. And when the circus came to town, he saw a big opportunity to open a concession stand and move around with them. Mama didn't like that. She's not much like Daddy for a while now. Sometimes I hear them arguing when they think we're all asleep. When Daddy told Mama the plan, she took Sylvia and me and moved into an apartment in the big city of Indianapolis. There were days when I really missed Daddy, but he was going on the road, and with my leg, I couldn't go with him. But I love Mommy and would have picked her anyway. She rented an apartment near East New York Street in Indiana, and we moved in. But life was hard, with no money and all. I could see the sadness and pain in Mama's eyes when she looked at us. Something was bothering her, but I was too young to see what it was. One day that sadness disappeared, and so did she. She had left that morning, and evening came, but she didn't. We waited for days, but she did not come home. I met Paula Baniszewski at school. and she had a big family and a lot of friends. Hungry and scared, we went to her house for food and told Mrs. Gertrude about her plight. She invited me to stay with her for a while. Just me, she said. She didn't want Sylvia to stay, but I told her that I would not stay without my sister, so she let us. But the sense that something was not right with her was creeping into my bones, and I was scared. But loneliness and hunger were more powerful than what I saw in her. Plus, the outside world was no place for two girls alone. Not long after, Daddy found us and told us that Mom had been arrested for shoplifting. Even though she was released the same day, she never returned to us. Instead, she went home to her mom's house. Daddy had come to take us to Grammy, but we knew it would be hard for Grammy and him, so we asked if we could stay with Gertrude. She was taking care of her 7 kids and was doing fine, so we felt she could manage fine with 2 more. She also insisted that she could care for us when Daddy asked her. So Daddy gave Gertrude $20 in advance to take care of Sylvia and me. After making sure we're okay, Daddy went to get Mama, and she and Danny, my brother, went with him to work at the concession stand at the carnival. The next week, when the $20 to care for Sylvia and I didn't come, I finally saw what was in Gertrude's heart. Gertrude had sent for the mail, and when she didn't see the money from Daddy, she slapped Sylvia in the face, then moved over to me and did the same. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard her yell, "Take care of both of you bitches for a week for nothing." The $20 came the next day, but she didn't apologize to us. She just kept on like nothing happened. After that, the real abuse started. Sylvia and I had gone to the park. It was Saturday. We went there to collect empty bottles. We were hungry for candy, and Gertrude said she had no money to get that for us. So we gathered the bottles and took them to the depot down the street and exchanged them for cash. Almost running to the store, we used the money to buy candy. We got a lot and took home some to share among the other 7 children Gertrude had. When she saw us with the candy, she got so mad. Although we tried to tell her how we got them, she didn't believe us. She didn't believe that we had bought them and not stolen them. She grabbed her wooden paddle, a thick piece of board, and beat us with it. She started on our buttocks, then our backs, and even on our heads. When she got tired due to her asthma acting up, she called Paula, her eldest daughter, and handed her the paddle to beat us, which she was only too happy to do. I was in pain for days, swollen and sore all over. But the worst was yet to come for poor Sylvia. I guess they took pity on me because of my polio, and because of that I could do nothing to save my sister, or they would have turned on me too. Also, Sylvia was beautiful, and Gertrude and Paula hated her for it. I remember August 1st when we all went to church. Paula was wearing a cast so proudly on her right wrist. She had been punching and kicking Sylvia so mercilessly that she had sprained her hand. She was bragging, telling everyone she had sprained it, punching Sylvia in the face. Still with it on, she hit Sylvia in the mouth, bursting open her lips because she had heard that Sylvia had called her a derogatory name, which was a lie. Anyone could tell Paula a lie about Sylvia and she would believe it just so she could hurt Sylvia. Gertrude loved this and encouraged her to beat Sylvia. Even though Daddy was sending her money, Gertrude still did not have enough to feed us. All she had was what Daddy and her exes were sending her, which was not much. Using the money, she would make meals to feed herself and her kids first, and 9 times out of 10, we would get nothing to eat, or if we did, it was only scraps. Once Sylvia went into the kitchen to search for food when the hunger pangs were too much for us, and she got caught by Gertrude. Using the police leather strap Gertrude kept from her ex, who was a police officer, she beat Sylvia so severely that she had long red welts all over her body, even in her face. Our church was having dinner one time, and we were only too happy to attend. We hadn't had any good meal for weeks, but when we got home, Gertrude told Sylvia and I to strip down to our underoos, and using the wooden paddle, she beat us because she said we ate too much. I can't say we didn't. After weeks of not getting much to eat, we were hungry and happy to get food. But we were punished for eating. Poor Sylvia always got the worst punishments. I remember once when Diana, our older sister, visited. She took Sylvia out for a sandwich. Sylvia had brought a piece home for me, and Gertrude once again beat her with a wooden paddle for it. One of the worst ones I can remember was when Sylvia, by now too weak from starvation to fight back, was unable to fight off Gertrude, Paula, and the neighbor boy, Randy, who loaded up a hot dog with tons of peppers and as many condiments as they could find and forced it into Sylvia's mouth. She clamped her mouth shut, but Gertrude forced Sylvia's mouth apart with her fingers and pushed the hot dog down her throat. This caused Sylvia to vomit it up. Then they grabbed her by her hair and pushed her face in the vomit and held her there until she ate it. Stephanie was the only child of Gertrude who was kind to Sylvia and me. But when in anger Sylvia let it out that the girls, like their mom, would sleep with anyone for money, word got to Stephanie and she punched Sylvia in the face. They made up soon afterwards, though. But later, Stephanie's boyfriend, Coy Hubbard, in doing what everyone else was doing, found Sylvia and beat her up. But that didn't end there. Gertrude found out and took the leather belt, and she too beat Sylvia mercilessly. Then she held lit matches against Sylvia's fingertips and burnt them. Gertrude, chain smoker, would put out her cigarettes on Sylvia, leaving burnt marks all over her body. Also being a chain smoker, she was often sick and would blame Sylvia for her ill health and would beat her whenever she felt strong enough to do so. The constant beatings and torture were getting worse and worse, and because Sylvia was so malnourished, her wounds would not heal. She had to be taken out of school because Gertrude did not want the teacher to see what she and Paul and the rest of them were doing to Sylvia. I cried every night because I couldn't save her. She wanted it to be her and not me. She would take it all to save me. When friends from school who hadn't seen her in a while came to the house, Gertrude would tell them lies so they would leave. On one occasion when Sylvia's friend Hannah came to visit, Gertrude told her that Sylvia was telling everyone that her mother was going out with various men for $5. When Sylvia came to the door, Anna started slapping and kicking her, and when the other kids tried to stop it, Gertrude stopped them. Gertrude even encouraged her children and neighborhood kids who came to visit to beat Sylvia. Paula would hit her in the head with anything she could. One day at the beginning of September, Paula dragged Sylvia to the back door and told her to get away and stay away. But not having anywhere to go and not wanting to leave me, Sylvia stayed. That was the only act of kindness Paula ever showed Sylvia. At the beginning of October, Mama and Daddy came to visit. Gertrude told us to keep our trap shut. She didn't want to lose the money coming in from Daddy. We knew they were not coming to get us yet, so we did, fearing that if we told them anything, the abuse would get more violent. Our parents were planning on coming to get us in 3 weeks, so we prayed that with the permanent return of our parents, we would finally be free from this abuse. After they left, the abuse of Sylvia continued. One day, Sylvia was so hungry that she went in search of food from the garbage bin outside. A neighbor saw her but did nothing about it. They too feared Gertrude and her hateful kids. When Sylvia tried to sneak back into the house, Gertrude and a group of boys made Sylvia strip and held her down, then did something to her privates with a glass bottle that is so horrific that I can't talk about it. It breaks me to pieces. This act resulted in making Sylvia wet the bed, and for that she was thrown in the basement without food and water. Occasionally they would throw her some crackers and a small bottle of water. There was more abuse with words carved into her stomach, and she was so weak at this point that she couldn't even fight. They would rub salt into her open wounds and then force her into a hot scalding bath. The abuse continued for many more days until finally Sylvia succumbed to her injuries. 3 days before her death, Sylvia told me that she was going to die, that she felt it. I begged her to hold on a little longer, but after seeing her dead, I knew she couldn't. When the police arrived, they found Sylvia lying on a soiled mattress on the floor of an empty upstairs bedroom. Stephanie and her boyfriend had pulled her away after finding them spraying her with dish soap and water to clean her up. When Stephanie and Coy couldn't revive her, they called the police. When the police arrived, they found Sylvia's body covered with cuts, severe bruises, and a variety of open sores, some from over 100 cigarette burns, peeling, scald marks, and missing skin. She had 2 black eyes, shredded lips, and fingernails broken backwards. She was malnourished, and a 3 was branded on her chest, and the words, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it," were etched into her stomach. Gertrude told them lies that Sylvia had left with a group of boys to have sex. Then after the boys beat her and left her on the front lawn. All the children corroborated the story, but I couldn't let them get away with it. And now with Sylvia gone, I knew I would be next. Just before the last officer left, I walked over to one of them and begged him to take me with him. I told him if he did, I would tell them everything about how Sylvia died. He did, and the prosecutor took me in for the duration of the trial. At the station, I told them everything, and they went and arrested 37-year-old Gertrude, 17-year-old Paula, 15-year-old Stephanie, 12-year-old John Jr., 15-year-old Richard Hobbs, and 15-year-old Coy Hubbard, and charged them with first-degree murder for striking, beating, kicking, and otherwise inflicting fatal injuries on my sister Sylvia Likens with premeditated malice. There were more neighborhood children involved, but they were not charged, seeing that they were too young and all. These were children who visited the house and were encouraged by Gertrude to beat Sylvia. Gertrude told the police it was Paula who abused Sylvia, but when questioned, she also pointed the fingers at 4 more children from the neighborhood. After questioning, they were released. An autopsy revealed that Sylvia's bones were sticking out and had cuts, wounds, and puncture marks all over her body. Her liver was yellow and showed signs of malnutrition. Her kidney and brain were severely damaged, and her privates were red and swollen due to trauma inflicted by Gertrude. Her cause of death was due to subdural hematoma due to head trauma. Sylvia Likens, my sister, died slowly and painfully over several months. She finally succumbed to her injuries on October 26, 1965. Gertrude pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, but was found guilty on May 19, 1966, of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. She was spared the death penalty despite her own lawyer admitting that, in my opinion, she ought to go to the electric chair. Paula was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. But in 1971, she pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of voluntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 2 to 21 years. Even though she escaped from prison but was later caught, she was released after 8 years. She moved to Iowa, changed her name, and became a teacher's assistant, but was later found out and fired. John, Richard, and Coy were found guilty of manslaughter and given 2 to 21-year prison sentence, but ended up only serving 2 years in the state reformatory. Stephanie was found not guilty and did not serve any time in prison. Gertrude spent 20 years in prison and was granted parole and released on December 4, 1985. She died of lung cancer on June 16, 1990. She was 61 years old. Good riddance to bad rubbish. There had been many other forms of torture. Some are too gruesome to share here. I will leave a link below if you care to read more about this. Now for our next story. Situated within Holiday Park in Indianapolis, the stone structures known as the ruins are not remnants of some ancient civilization, but rather the preserved remains of a demolished skyscraper in New York. Though originally functional parts of the St. Paul building in Manhattan, they have been reimagined as classical artworks within the park. Among these sculptures are the 3 figures atop the relocated foundation, collectively titled The Races of Man, crafted in the 1890s. These figures symbolizes cooperation across different races, Caucasian, Asian, and African American, once appearing to support the weight of the skyscraper above them. Over time, additional features have been incorporated into the setting, such as a ring of classical columns surrounding the important stonework, fragments from other structures, and water elements like fountains and reflecting pools. Check these out. Well, that is it for now, guys. I hope this one kept your interest. If you're still here, let me know by clicking the thumbs up icon, and if you want to leave a comment, do so. I would like to hear from you. Also, I have many more stories from this area for you, so click all in the drop down menu so you don't miss any. Remember to love yourself and others, and I'll see you on the next one. Love you. Bye.